Larry Pratt, Gun Owners of America, joins me. Larry, welcome to the show, man. I'm sorry we had some trouble getting a hold of you, but you're on now. I'm going to give the mic to you. Before I do, I'm going to give you some statistics and get your comment. The U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice statistics reports are out. At 1,825 days, a 5-year period, there were 58,483 murders. That's 32 a day. Versus 129 defensive gun uses reported, that's 235,700, over that same 1,825-day period. How do you account for that, Larry?
It doesn't fit the narrative coming out of the anti-gun folks at all.
No.
They've been having a problem with this since Clinton started putting this kind of data together, and we consistently find that there are many times more defensive gun uses every day than there are criminal uses of firearms. So the other side, I think they've proven by now they're not interested in public safety. That's simply the best argument they can come up with. Obviously, it's not going to be an easy sell if they say, well, look, we want to take over the country for the socialist agenda we have, and we don't want you shooting at us, so therefore we want to take away your guns in the name of public safety. But they really, by their silence, tell us why we have the Second Amendment.
Well, Larry, Neil McCabe is joining us as well, too. Neil, I want you to jump in here. Feel free to jump in at will. Neil, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Larry. Before we start, though, I didn't have a chance to speak to you personally about it, but I've said it over and over again. And the way you were treated on the Piers Morgan show was such a disgrace. And obviously, this guy coming from England has no idea of your stature and your place in American conservatism and in American politics and for gun rights. And I just have so much respect for you, and I just wanted to say that before we started.
Well, thank you. I think one of his critical mistakes is thinking that he can talk us out of our war for independence with a British accent.
There you go. A great way to put that. Larry, I want to go back to this report for this firearm violence report from 1993 to 2011. Some of the highlights off of the report itself. Firearm-related homicides declined 39% from 18,253 in 1993 to 11,101 in 2011. Now, one thing that they don't tell us is that private firearm ownership in this country is at its highest levels in history, particularly record levels under Obama. How do they account for that?
I think they whistle right on past that one as if there's nothing to see, just keep on moving here. That is obviously a big embarrassment for them, and I haven't heard a cogent explanation. They try to come back and make some other irrelevant argument, but they really don't have an answer to that. The silence is deafening.
Well, who's hitting him with this stuff? I'm looking for it, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of it unless you look at the conservative press. You're not seeing this come out of CBS. You're not seeing this come out of ABC, and you're certainly not seeing it come out of NBC or MSNBC or CNN. Who's hitting them with these numbers?
Well, I don't know who's hitting them, but I think the American people are hearing about it thanks to programs like this one right now, the Internet in general. We have seen the numbers move, even since Newtown, with all of the Democrat media's effort to convince us that we ought to be disarmed. That's not what the American people are increasingly supporting, which is just the opposite. No more gun control laws. We don't support any new gun control. It's got to be extremely frustrating, and I think maybe we've come up with an explanation why they have so prolonged this particular debate, even at the risk of losing it worse than ever, and it's because we may have reached a tipping point, and they may sense that if they don't grab our guns at this juncture, that the way opinion seems to be moving, it'll be a long time before they're ever able to even have a shot at it.
Do they stand a chance right now? Do they stand a chance?
I don't think so. I don't see how they're going to get those votes. There's so many Democrats running for re-election in the Senate in Republican states, Republican-leaning states. There's 4 of them that have already voted correctly, which makes it, I would think, even more difficult for them to back out. If anything, I'm more concerned about Republicans at this point, making sure that they don't go off the reservation. Mitch McConnell is of no use, and we're going to have to be very vigilant, particularly with the Republicans.
No, I was going to say that Larry was in the thick of it. After Columbine, Larry was part of that quick action team that kept the Republicans in the Senate who are pushing those gun restrictions. And, and Larry, you know that in the last session it was the Republicans that screwed up the national concealed carry in the House.
The Republicans in the House have had the bad judgment of choosing John Boehner as their leader. There were only 12 of them that, at the end of the day, when it came down to a vote, were willing to publicly say, I don't support John Boehner. They may have supported nobody. They may have supported some other member of Congress, but they didn't support John Boehner. When they started out that morning, the morning of the day of that vote, there were, give or take, 25 votes. There were more than enough to force another caucus vote on somebody else other than Boehner, and they chickened out. They actually were able to could have pulled off a stunning blow to the Republican establishment in D.C., and about a dozen guys and gals, I guess, backed out.
Okay, why? Larry, why?
You almost have to have been in a legislative environment to appreciate how stupid you can get. I spent a couple of years in the Virginia legislature, and I was able to see what was happening to myself. I had campaigned along with the guy that got elected governor, both of us saying no new taxes. Well, it didn't take him long before that was what he wanted to do. And he was inviting me to one-on-ones in his office that somehow, and I said, look, if you can show me how to plausibly explain why we're going back on our word, then I'll certainly consider what you're saying. But right now, it seems to me you and I are both stuck. We made very public statements about not raising any new taxes. And finally, it came to the point where I had to get up and walk out of his office, and as I was grabbing the door handle, he said, I'll not forget this. That's what you go through in a legislature. And if it hadn't been for my wife screaming at me shortly before that over the phone, you're not thinking about voting for that, are you?
Right.
I'm not sure I could tell you that I would have been a good guy. I might have been sucked in by the peer pressure and the environment that you're in, which is kind of sealed away from the rest of reality when you're in a legislative body.
To let your gun ride in a super tuck by Crossbreed also.
You know, I remember when we were at the NRA and I kept looking at those, the super tuck. Absolutely one of the best looking holsters I've ever seen.
People came up to us all day long. In fact, they brought their old ones in to show us how worn they were.
Sure did.
Neil McCabe, welcome to Armed American Radio. We appreciate you being here. HumanEvents.com, Guns and Patriots Editor. Always a pleasure, my friend. And get this, we're going to call this the Round Table this hour. Joining us at the table, the executive director of the Gun Owners of America, our friend, no compromise, baby, Larry Pratt. Larry, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have you here.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
Hey, and we have another set of feet kicking up at the table, too. David Codrea joins us from Hudson, Ohio. The incredible insight and wisdom from David Codrea. David, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, this sounds like fun.
Woo, this is a good one, isn't it? Let's jump right in. David, I understand you have some news. I think the rest of us might be able to chew on. The mic is yours, bro.
Okay, good. Yeah, I told Shanto when I was calling in that I had 3 real quick ones that I wanted to get out of the way, and if we want to discuss them further, we can. But I just wanted to basically say that, first of all, if you go to my blog, which is War on Guns, waronguns.com, there are going to be 2 icons in the left-hand margin. One is for Guns Across the Border, which is Mike Deddy's book. He came on your show and talked about it.
Right.
And I've got a thing going where if you click on that, you can find out how you can win a free copy of that book. And to put the idea simply, to try to get it promoted, I'm asking people to get their libraries to pick it up. So if you click on the Guns Across the Border icon, that'll take you there. The second thing is I have another icon with the Magical Mystery Tour bus, and this is Bloomberg's bus tour, which kicked off on Friday.
Ooh.
And what we're trying to do is get people to sign up as you always advise people to do, to sign up with what the other side is doing, right. And this will tell you how to do it so that he'll tell you when the bus is going to be in your area, because they're being very coy because they don't want our side to show up with more people than they can muster by pulling the bus stop by surprise. So again, these two things, if you go to waronguns.com, you can find out how to win a free copy of Guns Across the Border, and you can also find out how to get notified when the Bloomberg bus tour comes through to your area.
So Bloomberg bus tour.
David, those are two important activism things I think that everybody can do that'll be fun and that won't take much time at all. The third point I wanted to cover real quickly. You know how the antis are trying to scare us, and they're trying to say, well, we're going to go after the anti-gun politician, or we're going to go after the pro-gun politicians, and they're going to be sorry for what they did by defeating gun control. And in fact, in Connecticut, 53rd House District, Samuel Belcedo took back the 53rd District from the Democrats, first Republican in 40 years. He ran on a pro-gun platform, and get this, his opponent, the Democrat, Anthony Horn, also ran on a pro-gun platform. This is in Connecticut. This is in Dan L.P. Malloy's backyard. They were crowing in Chicago when Robin Kelly won Jesse Jackson Jr.'s old seat after Bloomberg put $2 million into it. And plus, it was Chi-Town anyway. I mean, these people vote gun control in that district. So I think that we've got some interesting momentum and an interesting object lesson politically that the other side is all AstroTurf, and they can't match the grassroots.
They've never been able to. Let's go to grassroots activism at its best. Larry.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Let's start with Bloomberg. I have 2 points with you. Let's start with Bloomberg first, the Bloomberg bus tour. David certainly didn't give us anything to talk about when he brought up Bloomberg now, did he?
Well, it's nice of the mayor to tell us what we ought to be doing, but if ever there were a poor face to present to the American people, I mean, the guy just breathes the image of a ruling class. He knows better than we. Just shut up and do what he's telling us. Frankly, I don't think he's a very effective spokesman, and the more he runs around and spending his money reminding us how obnoxious he is, I think that's a pretty good thing.
You know, I'm going to agree with you. In fact, I have alluded to that here on the program, that the louder he gets, the more vocal we get, the more people he ticks off. The more people he ticks off, what is it? What did you just mention, David? AstroTurf versus grassroots. The AstroTurf doesn't grow. The grassroots do. All he does is spray water on the AstroTurf. I think it's a great thing. I agree with you, too. Bring the money on. Watch the fight get bigger. Neil McCabe, your comments on that.
Great friend of mine, Brian Darling, who used to do the podcast with me and now works for Rand Paul, and always makes the point that he has never heard of a politician who lost an election because he was too gun right. But he hears all the time about politicians who lose because they're not gun rights enough. And gun voters, they will show up. The anti-gun voters, they're anti-gun, they're anti-this. They've got a lot of things on their plate. But gun voters are absolutely motivated, and when they're called on to defend their gun rights, they show up.
Yeah, anti-gunners, that's a great point. Anti-gunners aren't just anti-gun. They're also anti-gasoline. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of anti-things going on in the anti-gunners' minds, and it's hard for them to focus. Larry Pratt, on our side of the fence, though, we see, and I know this is dear to your heart as it is to mine, the mainstream media. Let's shift it here, because what we're not seeing from the mainstream media is what we're talking about here. And that is, how come we're not seeing what's happening in Connecticut? How come we don't see the pro-gun establishment picking up steam when all they want to do is put out an anti-gun point of view? Why does that happen?
I think they, as we were talking earlier, they are getting rather desperate because they can see that not only are they not winning many battles outside of a few very Democrat and liberal states, and even there in Colorado, Connecticut, you've been talking about, there's some pushback that's already been manifest. Out in Colorado, the state Senate president was the spark plug for the horrible bill that the legislature passed, and within the time allowed, twice the number of signatures required were obtained in order to put his name on a retention.
And we're going to get out on that recall, too. And when we come back...
The Super Tuck by Crossbreed Holsters, the most comfortable and concealable holster available on the market today. Is it any wonder why it's the most copied design on the planet? Used by law enforcement and civilians around the world, the Super Tuck by Crossbreed is adjustable for ride depth and cant, often imitated but never duplicated. The Super Tuck holster is available for a wide variety of popular carry guns. For more information and to order your Super Tuck, visit crossbreedholsters.com. That's crossbreedholsters.com.
Larry Pratt was talking about the Senate president out there in the recall election. Larry, we got cut off by the break. Go ahead and finish that thought, if you would. Important people understand where we're at out there.
Well, this was the guy that spark-plugged the passage of the Colorado anti-gun bill in the Senate, and the supporters of the petition to get him on a recall ballot were able, in almost record time, certainly well before the allotted time by law, they were able to gather twice the number of signatures required, which means it's almost impossible to conceive that there'll be enough disqualified signatures for him not to go on the ballot. That means they're going to have to play defense for the dirty job they did to gun owners earlier on, and hopefully, win, lose, or draw, this is going to take them way off their game. And it would almost appear to me that if you can get that many signatures that quickly, that this guy could really be in serious trouble. And even right now, I think we've sent a worthwhile message, and it only might get better.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I've been watching the numbers, been in contact with a number of people out there in Colorado, and the numbers are quite impressive. So we're going to keep watching that, keep our finger on the pulse with that. Neil McCabe, have you been following any of the recall efforts out there?
No, this is what I'm first hearing about it, but I know that there's a group of people who want to separate a part of Colorado into a new state of northern Colorado. I'm always impressed when conservatives can get these sort of petitions together, because conservatives tend not to have sort of the apparatus that the left has. They don't walk around with like the handheld computers when they go door to door, and so it always seems more grassroots and authentic. And like Larry said, he may beat it, but he'd be lying if he says he wasn't scared.
Well, conservatives can't go door to door during the day they're working.
Yeah, it's like they can't get time off from the Registry of Motor Vehicles.
Yeah, those pesky jobs get in the way. Take a listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Charles Heller has been kind enough to hold. Larry, you're going to love this. This is just so right up everybody's alley. David Codrea, you're going to eat this up, too, and Neil, I know you will. Charles Heller, Executive Director of the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. You have some fun stuff to tell us about a raffle, don't you, Charles?
Oh, do I ever.
Oh, go. The mic is yours, brother.
Thank you. And, gentlemen, it's an honor to be on with all of you, Mark included. I'm especially, thank you for the time to do this. I want to be as brief as I can, so if anybody wants to fire a question my way, they can. But as you know, the SAFE Act happened in New York, and it's a travesty. And the response from manufacturers has been pretty uniform. Many of them have decided that they're not going to sell guns to police agencies if a civilian could not purchase that same firearm illegally in that state. So as a result, NYPD SWAT came to Barrett, and Barrett just laughed at them. And so they went to Armalite, and Armalite said, we have Barrett's policy. So they went to Mark Serbu at Serbu Manufacturing. He makes some wonderful, very short shotguns, and he calls it the 50 BFG, and it's exactly what you think it stands for, so I won't say it. And we've decided when NYPD wanted a rifle that he had, he said not just no, but hell no. And we decided at JPFO we're going to raffle off the rifle, which NYPD got turned down for on the background check. And on the letter of provenance, we're going to have an NYPD logo with a circle and slash through it. Own the rifle that NYPD got turned down for. And you can buy that a chance on the rifle. It's only $20 a ticket, and it's going to have a unique serial number, JPFO 01. There will only be one ever made. You will own one of one. So, and on the left side will be our logo, which is a 6-pointed star wrapped around with an American flag and an AR-15 on either side of it.
Yeah, that's a
that'll be on the port side, and on the on the letter of provenance, and the starboard side will have the serial number JPFO 01, one of one.
Where can people go to get in on the raffle and to donate?
jpfo.org, and you do not have to be Jewish to be a member of JPFO, but it doesn't hurt. It's the John Browning design. It's 50 the cartridges, and it's a semi-automatic magazine-fed 10-round magazine, semi-automatic rifle. It has an action like glass. It is so smooth that you wish you could get that smooth of a shave, that feel when you pull the bolt back.
I love it.
And it just the bolt goes home with such the spring in that thing is so powerful that when the bolt goes home, you feel it in your fillings.
Oh, I'm loving it. All right, let's go over to Larry Pratt.
I'm not sure I want to do that to my fillings.
Oh, yes, you do, Larry.
I got too much invested in them to be playing around like that, my friend.
I'm only talking about the bolt closing, not about the gun going off.
If you do, make sure you do it on Chris Matthews' Hardball show for all of us to witness.
Actually, what we're doing with this is it's a wonderful opportunity to stick a thumb in the eye of Bloomberg. And Bloomberg deserves as many thumbs in the eye as he can get because, I'm the one of us here who can say this without being accused of anti-Semitism. He's a real bagel-brained Jew.
I couldn't think of a better guy.
That came from our rabbi. Okay.
I couldn't think of a better guy. Charles, stick around with us if you would. Love to have you join the panel for the remainder of this hour of Armed American Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a good one. Charles Heller from the JPFO, David Kodria, Larry Pratt, and Neil McCabe, humanevents.com. Back after this. I'm Mark Walters, filling your prescription for freedom. About 70 to 80% of firearm homicides and 90% of non-fatal firearm victimizations were committed with a handgun from 1993 to 2011. Of course, this would seem to fly in the face of Senator Feinstein's desire to strip you of those evil rifles used so infrequently. In fact, how infrequently, you might ask? I happen to have that number. Less than 1.5%. Possession of firearms by state and federal prison inmates at time of offense by specific type of firearm from 1997 through 2004, less than 2%.
Well, look at that young man or that animal that shot that teen in Chicago that was at the inauguration. He had already had several gun charges on him, and my question is, why is this guy walking around on the earth? He should be under a jail.
Well, that's a whole different discussion. But you're right. There's no question about it. Of course, that goes to recidivism and everything else. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that there were more people killed by hammers, bludgeoned to death by hammers, than Senator Dianne Feinstein's choice of weapon to strip you of owning. Larry Pratt, from the Gun Owners of America. Larry, let me go to you, and then I'll go directly to Neil. The thing that concerns me most about what I'm seeing from, well, a lot of things do, the National Security Agency and so forth, now admitting that they're actually listening to phone calls. Of course, 2 weeks ago they weren't listening to phone calls. Now they are listening to phone calls. With the snooping going on with our telephone records and everything else. I opened up the show last week, Larry, letting listeners know that I can no longer trust this government. Nobody in a position of power will I give the benefit of the doubt to anymore. And you probably feel the same way, and I don't think you're naive enough to think that this hasn't been going on for quite some time. Clearly it has been. But now it's out in the open, and now we hear what we don't want to believe. And I want to take this to firearms with you because we heard nobody wants your name. No, there's not going to be any list. In fact, this bill says no, we're not going to do that. Yeah.
Right.
Your thoughts and fears.
Other federal laws already do as well. So we were monumentally unimpressed with those protestations, and we said, look, you guys are already telling dealers that go through your portal online to do a background check that data becomes the permanent record of the federal government. So they were all but admitting that they were compiling a registration list. And now that we have the IRS scandal dumped in front of us, there can't be any more doubt that not only has the government been lying to us, I know that's a shock, but they've been lying to us, they have been building the list, and all they would be waiting for would be one of David Axelrod's or one of those types of folks' crisis sufficient to, quote, justify the guns, and in they come to scarf them up.
The conversation went like this. Oh, they already know who you are. They already have your name. Mm-hmm. They already have that list. They don't know what you bought because nowhere on that form does it state what you bought, but they know who you are and they know you bought a gun. So they have your list. Larry, they've had a list for a long time. I've always assumed that. Have I been wrong, or is it something new?
They've had it for a long, long time. It was evident that they had it at the level of the dealer's store. Right. From the distributor, they can track it to the dealer's store, to whatever was the last recorded transfer of the firearm. They only lose track if somebody buys anonymously from a relative or a friend in that sort of a situation.
Oh, wait, whoa, stop. Wait a minute. You mean they lose track of that? That could be the push for universal background checks, couldn't it? They want universal background checks because those happen to be the only weapons today that they can't track?
Bingo. That's exactly what this argument was all about. And I think, I would hope that Americans are now losing confidence in not only this government, but this was going on under Republican and Democrat alike.
Sure it was.
Ronald Reagan, who, somebody I thought rather fondly of, but this was not his strong suit. And this has been going on for a long time, and the government behaves more as a ruling class, and they have a Republican and a Democrat wing, and they have intramurals, but they never really come to cut the government back to any constitutional size. So it seems to me that we are right to not even have confidence in most Republicans, certainly not a John Boehner, the leader in the House, or a Mitch McConnell, the leader in the Senate. And isn't it interesting how turkeys like Senator McLuser of Arizona are so critical of the wacko birds like Ted Cruz, a man of principle, integrity, of great intelligence, and pushing the system. And he's openly stated he doesn't like Republicans any more than he likes Democrats. Good for him.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we need. That's the fresh voice, and this is a generational thing that I think we're going to see. The old guard, the establishment, is fighting literally for their political lives right now. And when you talk about maybe McLuser in Arizona, is that who you were referring to? Is that what you said? Yeah, okay. I see, and I love that. The old guard, Mitch McConnell. You think Mitch McConnell's the future of the Republican Party, ladies and gentlemen? Please, I'm selling you oceanfront property in Nebraska. Larry,
who is a loser, lost a presidential election that he should have won. He lost it because he runs away from the core principles that are the stated platform of the Republican Party. Right. That's only good for us rubes. It's not good enough to run, let alone rule on. And I'm tired of the deference played to people like McCain and calling him a maverick. I think we trap ourselves when we allow words like that to come out of our mouths. John McCain is not a maverick. John McCain is a subversive who hates the Constitution and is a wrecking ball that's been doing all he can to destroy constitutional government in this country since he got into office. I'm sorry he's a war hero, but that's the last good thing he's done in his life.
Larry, what's the purpose of the list? What's the purpose of the list? Let's get universal background checks. Now, and by the way, hats off to the Nevada governor for vetoing the bill, the universal background check bill. Hats off to you. If we have time, we'll discuss that. But just to let you know, the Nevada governor did veto that universal background check bill.
Well, the only purpose for the list is confiscation. They prosecute almost nobody, even though it's technically a felony when you are presumed to have told a lie, when you check something on the 4473 form that's not, in fact, the truth, whether you did it willfully or not. Nevertheless, they maybe prosecute, 40-some a year out of over 10, 11 million background checks a year. It's not useful for police work. That's just simply not the case. But the only thing it can be good for is coming after our guns. And we have people in office right now that would love to do just that. The words of Dianne Feinstein ought to come to mind. If I'd have had the votes, I'd have said, turn them all in, Mr. and Mrs. America.
51. If I'd have had the votes, 51. Come and take them all. Led Mr. and Mrs. America, I would have done it. Absolutely correct about that. We're getting ready to take a break. When we come back from that break, I want to talk to Neil about, and then to go to David and get their opinion on, does the government really want to come and get our guns? We hear that a lot from the left. You really think they want to come and get your guns? My position on that is, as Larry just mentioned, they have the list. They want the list. Guess what happens? At a time of their place and their choosing, if they so desire.
Hey, Mark. Shh. Okay, he can't hear us. Yo, this is Shanto. I've gotten a lot of emails wanting to know if I have a blog or a radio show or things of that nature. Actually, I do. And the simple way to find out what I'm talking about, all you got to do is go to radiofactor.net. That's right, radiofactor.net. Each week, I'm going to blog about some of the major political news that's going on in this country today. Remember, radiofactor.net. Let's get back to the show. And remember, radiofactor.net.
This is Armed American Radio, filling your prescription for freedom every week, giving you a voice. Now, your host, Mark Walters.
Hey, we were talking golf and racing during the break. That doesn't normally happen very often, what's it? Golf and racing.
I'll pick racing over golf any day.
That's okay. I can do both. It really doesn't matter.
You can actually watch that on television? I mean, sure, I like playing it. I enjoy
watching it anyway. Let's go back to talking about firearms. We had
a better man than me.
Fascinating conversation about whether or not the government wants our guns. You know, we hear, do you really believe, and I've been interviewed by the left on dozens and dozens of radio shows, where do you really believe that Obama wants to come and take your guns?
Yes.
Well, you answered that quickly. Larry, I'll ask you that real quick, and then we'll go over to Neil and then over to David. Larry, do they want to come and get our guns?
Of course Obama does. He's a socialist. He voted that way every chance he had on those occasions when he happened to be in the body he'd been elected to. Yes, he wants our guns because obviously that would make it difficult to accomplish the rest of his political agenda if people can finally say, as we told George III, get out of here.
Pretty much, yeah. And the fact of the matter is that's why they lie about the statistics. It's why they lie. That's why they exploit tragedy for their own political gain, and that is to serve an agenda. Neil McCabe, does the government want our guns?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, look at the Feinstein bill. What were there? How many different models of guns were on that list? And that's just the starting point. Like Larry said, I mean, these guys are progressive socialists, and Obama is looking to transform America. And by transform, he means to actually overturn and destroy significant subcultures that he finds abhorrent. And the firearms community is very, very dangerous to them. Just like they don't like independent businesses, they don't like the nuclear family, they don't like sort of the military, the way it's being run, and they are looking to transform America. And one way to do that, of course, is to eliminate gun ownership.
He made that very clear when he ran in 2008, and he made it very clear when he ran in 2012. He isn't doing anything he didn't already tell us he was going to do. Yep. David Codrea, why are some pundits, and I hold the media responsible for a lot of this. It is the media that drives what we see, what we hear, and it is the media that creates news by virtue not only of what they tell us, but also by virtue of what they don't tell us, by what they leave out, okay, that makes their guy look bad. Now, David, having said that about the mainstream media, you know where I come from relative to where the media is. What are your thoughts on putting everything together with the mainstream media in the bag, the president, progressive socialist agenda?
I can't do this. I need another hour. And here's the thing. These gun grabbers, and the media is part of it. They're the cheerleaders. They're not going to do reporting, and they might get into a snit because their own files are being looked at, but they keep coming back to them, and Media Matters and Think Progress are still on his side, and they're going to bring them back. And here's the thing. The gun grabbers never tell us what's enough. They always say this is a good first step. All we want is universal background checks. Yeah, but wouldn't you also like to ban assault weapons? Well, yeah. Or wouldn't you also like to cut back on concealed carry and turn it all into May issue, or even get rid of that altogether and make it well, yeah, of course. And so they never tell us what their end game is, because the end game is they do want us disarmed. And here's the thing. While DOJ and ATF may be prohibited from appropriations from compiling a list based on 4473s, you'd better believe the government with NSA and the other agencies that aren't prohibited know exactly what it is we buy, because they're into our bank accounts, and every time we do a transaction, they know that we bought that Smith & Wesson or that Springfield Armory. They know exactly that, and with our cell phones and with our laptops and with our OnStar in our cars. What are computers good for? Correlating data and bringing in relationships. They know when we go to the gun store. Yep. They know when we go to the range. You better believe that all this information is available so that if they want to zero in on someone, they can home in and they can bring up just a wealth of data. And yes, absolutely, the end game is to wait until our old generation is dead.
That's right.
They continue to brainwash the younger generation, and they're very patient, and they will make their move.
Generational confiscation is what we refer to that as on Armed American Radio. Generational confiscation. Charles Heller, what are they waiting for?
They're just waiting for Moses to get done in the desert before they grab the guns from his flock. Hey, I got a way to address this. I call it tailpiped carburetorism. You lawfully learn how things work well enough to stick the tailpipe of government so far down its own intake that it chokes on its exhaust. I run a program locally on the radio here in Tucson called Swap Shop, and people are free to buy, sell, or trade anything they want as long as it's lawful and moral. So your machine guns, if they're on a Form 4, are perfectly fine, but pornography's not, because one has social value and the other doesn't. There are shows like it all over the country. There's hundreds of them. Get on the radio in every jurisdiction that allows you to do it in terms of the radio, not the government, and offer your gun or ask for a gun for sale and create a massive, an iron river of lawful commerce between private individuals and stick the tailpipe of government that wants the information about the guns right down its carburetor.
That's a great way to put it. And let's go back around the table and start with Larry Pratt again. Larry, are they going to eventually win this battle? And I'm going to be honest with you, when I walk around, I did a lot of traveling over the last 6 or 7 months, and I can't tell you how discouraging it is to walk through every airport I've been in, to walk through every mall I've been in, to walk through every event that I've attended and see the dumbed-down face in the phone, absolutely zero interaction whatsoever. Are they winning this battle with that generation?
Well, I don't think we're out of the woods, but I'm cautiously optimistic because, as I mentioned a little bit ago during our conversation, the numbers have been moving away from them. When I first began lobbying on behalf of the Second Amendment, which was several decades ago, the numbers of people that supported, quote, more gun control, stupid questions like that, was extremely high, and now they can't even break 50%. We have made a lot of progress, and what I think must befuddle them, at a minimum, is every time they think they've got a grave they can dance on, we come and take the whole thing and move it our direction. It gives us one of the few opportunities we have to be on the Democrat media, and when it's live, then they can't even really play around with what we've said. So if Piers Morgan wants to take us on, or Chris Matthews, or any of these other jokers, it's one thing for them to report about us and what stupid things we say and do. But when we're actually there, and we've got some really excellent spokesmen, and, as you know, Piers Morgan was on a real campaign, and he had all kinds of Second Amendment spokesmen on, and they all did at least a good job, and many of them were doing excellent jobs. And that's got to be extremely disappointing for these yokels.
We can't have a totally armed society.
We'll never get a handgun ban with the Second Amendment as stated.
I don't know. I don't know that we can't.
None of these rights are absolute. None of them.
Senator Dianne Feinstein was the author of the assault weapons ban in 1994.
Professor Koppel, was the 1994 assault weapons ban a sensible and effective means of reducing gun violence?
Based on the Department of Justice study, the answer was no.
The assault weapons ban made sense.
And just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
Do I need a bazooka?
No one's taking away all the guns.
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
I'd love to see that. In uniform.
I will not take your shotgun away. I will not take your rifle away. I won't take your handgun away.
Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in.